Okay. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu to the weekly Halaqah. So inshallah, we've been looking in relation over the last few weeks to gems of the Quran, words and sounds. We're this week just having a slight break, just looking at bringing some ayats together, looking at the collective whole, and then we'll return to the gems and sounds and the word placement, which is part of Nazm of the Quran, inshallah ta'ala, probably next week. So how does the Quran tackle the human side? Okay, Bismillah. We go on to the first slide. What we have to understand with the human life is that we are one whole. If we just look here at the slide, and science today, science is the study of ayat, the study of signs, and now with quantum physics, and as man starts to study what's going on inside beyond the atom, and also moving into space with Allah subhanahu permission, that we're seeing symmetry. We're seeing everything is connected. Patterns, which we keep talking about in Heart C, patterns, relationships, and context. And the human brain, just look at this slide here on the left-hand side, and then we look at the universe on the right-hand side. And we could explore a fractal pattern that we would see in a leaf, a fractal pattern that we would see in all trees on Earth, and the same fractal pattern that we would see within ourselves, within the veins, within the arteries, within the neurosystem, also within the lungs. So we are all, the human is not apart from the natural world. And that's why we've called the whole of the organization, this journey is called Heart C, because it is only the heart that sees that will begin to understand this. And it's not, although, yes, okay, man is beginning to understand this, as I've just outlined, then if one does not connect to the blueprint, which is the Quran, then one will go down and continue to go down the same path that eventually it's just happening. It's a coincidence. It's just it's how it is. It's cause and effect simply, and it's the universe, the natural world does happen as a machine, and without this divine understanding who's driving this, which is none other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So one cannot partition the cosmos, the universe, the natural order from ourselves. We are part of it. And this is why, particularly now that the study of vibration and sound patterns, and that subject is called the study of cymatics. It is where it's been going for some time, but now people are just beginning to be alert to it, where the vibration sound, and if they put sand or other particles on a flat surface with that vibrational sound, it creates these beautiful geometrical patterns. But science is now also realizing that there's not space, say, between if you was in a room with someone, it's not empty space between you and that person. Okay, that space is completely full of, in one way, from how we understand it, is the patterns and relationships, and is full of creation, which is beyond our imagination. If you just look at 1 teaspoon full, you take 1 teaspoonful of soil, there's more living organisms in that 1 teaspoon of soil. Research has shown this, and there is on the whole population of humanity on Earth. And so, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that he will continue to show them the signs on the horizons and within themselves until those where the heart clicks and realizes for that what is the whole purpose. So one cannot petition, okay, and divide and separate. But as we've been teaching in Heartsea, sadly, that's the world in which we are living in, and that is the plan of the Satanic Order, is to divide. Now, the subject of divide and conquer has been there in colonialism for many, many years, and the subject of divide and conquer is still there today. We can say that globalization is just a new avenue of 21st century colonization. Just look at the global map. But that is not how we always saw the world. And in Heartsea, you just have to go onto our website, we discuss something dramatically happened, which academia all agree something dramatic happened around the 16th and 17th century, which was where the brain separated, although the brain is separated into the left brain hemisphere and the right brain hemisphere. But definitely it's separated into the fact that now mankind operates purely, or 99.99% more so, into the left brain hemisphere, which sees things in this disconnected way. And it's affecting our whole psyche, how we see, how we think, and how we act. And this is why it's important. And what we try and do, although not so much this week, is just to look at sort of a wider scale, is a wider view, is that we are focusing on the structure of the Quran, we are focusing on words and sound, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses words in the Quran within surahs, and which is part of Nazm of the Quran, the structure and this order, which is identical to the universe. And hence, when you have the Quran, within the Quran, you have the Al-Quran Taqwini, or also known as the Al-Kitab al-Kawn, all of the ayah, the signs in relation to the natural world, to the universe, to the cosmos. And so the human brain, back to this slide, is as I say, if we look inside, it's identical to the universe. There's no separation there at all. Go on to the next slide, please. And that's why I said to you, the study of quantum physics, although it's a theory, but it's becoming quite sort of factual. We can understand it now. We've gone as far as the atom and the electrons, and now we're penetrating deeper and deeper and deeper. And in simple terms, what they are seeing is still further connections, and that obviously attaches itself to understanding what Tawheed is. Linguistically means this continual unifying. Whether we see it in the brain, whether we see it in the universe, everything is continually connected, whether it's in the macro or the micro, which obviously connects to that first ayat revealed to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in the cave of Hira, because that first ayat, and it's connecting to quantum physics, because the first ayat is the command to read, and to understand the macro, the cosmos, in the first ayat. And then the second ayat going through, because the first 5 ayats were revealed to the Prophet, then there was a gap, a break, is then reflecting on what's taking place and to understand what's happening within oneself. So that is the study of quantum physics. But this is the study of vibration. This is the study going very much more deeper beyond the atom of energy and frequency. And that is leading to a battle today, because this is the battle, not for this session, this is the battle that Shaitan is playing out, because the world, the cosmos started Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation started with sound, kun, with a kaf and a noon, which is a vibrational noon. This connects us to the study of nazm of the Quran, and words and letters, and every letter, every word, every ayah is a ayah. And the world will end with the call of the sound. And the first mission given to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was to yatlu alayhim, to recite on them the sound. And the last revelation for the whole of mankind was to be recited. And the importance, which is a science in itself, of tajweed, of how each letter has to be pronounced correctly from its makhraj. And we haven't even covered the importance of that in relation to geometrical patterns and resonance and sound and vibration, which is beyond, it's just amazing. But this is all coming about, and so this is what science is saying is new, but our Islamic civilizations and our ulama understood this, our polymaths understood this, and ancient civilizations also understood this. But sadly, we're starting this week looking at everything is connected, but we're living in a world, sadly, where we're programmed to not see everything in a connected way, everything disconnected, which is affecting not just society, it's affecting the family, it's affecting the individual, and it's what's driving many of the mental health issues that we're facing today. Next slide. So just an example, we're just going to cover a few ayats tonight, but it will all be coming together to really link in to understand this importance that you cannot partition and you cannot put things in its compartments. It is the study, what we call today is the study of systems thinking, which is part of understanding Heartseed, and also how you have to understand the Quran through systems thinking, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even mentions about the stars, and the stars are there for navigation, but also the ayats in the stars is also a lesson for us about systems thinking. There's many ayats also. For an example here in Surah Baqarah, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. It's the ayat that we know and we recite before Ramadan and during Ramadan. O you who believe, O you who have believed, decreed upon you is fasting, as it was decreed upon those before you, that you may become righteous. Now, kutiba, as we go in, kutiba, okay? So here, it means it is a decree, it is an order, it is a system, okay? So when we look at that first ayat after Surah Al-Fatiha, Alif Lam Mim, Dhalika al-Kitab, although when you look linguistically at the word kataba and kitab, it refers to a book, that also means in the same way, because it's still the same letters, kataba. That is a system, it's an order, it's a structure. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran asks mankind to reflect and to ponder on this, on the previous civilizations, and to travel and go to what's left, the ruins of why these vast civilizations that built vast, sophisticated buildings, and this is part of also understanding ancient civilizations, okay, because they had a different mindset, they had a different psyche. Why they are totally in ruin, because although Allah opened the doors for them, they then went against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they went against this understanding of everything as one whole. And they began to partition, put everything in their compartments, and they turned away from the divine and then turned to the self. So then the destruction came. And sadly, we're doing it the same again as Muslims, because we shout about and we're very happy to talk about this ayat, okay, and about fasting, okay. But then when we go on to the next ayat, we go on to the next slide. Also in the same surah, but ayat 216, fighting has been enjoined upon you. Kutiba alaykum qital. So, but this we don't even want to recite, and we don't want to talk about. But it's still got the same kataba, kutiba. It's still been enjoined upon you. It's still been prescribed upon you. So these are just two examples in one surah that when the time is right and according to the rules and regulations, according to the rules of the Islamic Sharia, is why are we then focused on one ayat where Allah says kutiba in relation to fasting, but then in the same surah when Allah also uses the same phrase kutiba, then we just want to ignore that. Okay, and we're living in a time now we don't even want to study it or focus on it. So this is a clear lesson for us, okay, and how our psyche has now become that we are also partitioning. We are also deciding, let me deal with the ayat in relation to Surah Al-Baqarah in relation to fasting, but no, I don't want to deal with that. And it's the state that we are in, but it's also the same state as the Muslims were when they were in Mecca, when they were strong and they fled to Medina. And then as they established the Islamic community, and then you had three groups of Muslims. You had those that were really strong, which were there from the Hijrah of Mecca. And then you had the majority that were sort of coming on board, but very similar to how we're trying to relate these two ayats. Yeah, okay, well, I've become a Muslim. I'm happy with with the 5 pillars and the prayers and everything. But then that last group is the munafiq. But then once they're in Mecca, then the ayats are coming down because of then the issue of having to protect the Islamic State, and then the the issues of the war situation with the Quraysh. And it's then that second group thinking, oh, I haven't signed up to become Muslim because now I have to sacrifice my whole life, and now I have to go out in the path of Allah and also fight. So similar to how the second group of Muslims were in Medina to how we are today. And because, the fact is that we are how many in the world, but our mindset is polluted. Our hearts are not correct, and we are totally divided. Back to the ayat translation that Allah will not change a condition of people or a nation until they change that is within themselves. So continually in the Quran, Allah is connecting us to the universe. Look at the universe, how it's all connected, and go into quantum physics, go into the vibration, go into and all of the vibration. If you study cymatics and you look at the sound and the frequency, okay, whether it's low frequency, which takes us towards the darkness, towards Iblees, or it's high frequency, which is taken us to light, to nur, towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this frequency, the sound, which is then producing the geometrical patterns, we just have to understand when we look at the natural world that patterns are never in isolation. Patterns are all connected. Everything, if we look in terms of patterns, everything is connected. Okay, if we just look at patterns in our behavior, could be patterns of anger, patterns of addiction, could be whatever, patterns of joy. It's never separated. It's addiction. It's connected because something connects to something to make something happen. So Allah is continuing the Quran, and for those that see, showing us that everything is connected. But it's the psyche, it's how Shaitan is playing with us now to take us away from this whole connection and to completely divide us. And sadly, when we look inside the Quran as well, and this is what happened to previous nations, this is what happened to Christianity, this is what happened to Judaism, and we have to be very careful that we are not following in the same footsteps. And also, we are now going extreme. We have to be careful. Are we going extreme in the sense of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes? Okay, whereas everything should be in that mizan, that balance. Next slide. In Surah Fussilat, also known as Surah Hamim Sajda, just go to the ayat here, okay? Let's go through the translation first. Indeed, those who inject deviation into one of our verses are not concealed from us. So is he who is cast into the fire better, or he who comes secure on the day of resurrection? Do whatever you will. Indeed, he is seeing of what you do. Just open the ayat up. Inna alladhina yulhiduna. We'll just stop there. Yulhiduna. Ilhad. So yulhiduna, ilhad. What does ilhad mean? Ilhad. That's the word for to deviate. To deviate from the ayat. To change the injunctions ordained by Allah subhanahu. So what am I referring to? Okay, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to the munafiq. Those, remember when we moved to Medina, we have three groups of Muslims. In Mecca, we have one group, which are solid on the deen. Okay, there's a hadith of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, where a companion went to the Prophet and said, give me something for me that I can hang on to. And the Prophet said, billahi thumma istaqim. Okay, say that I believe, then stand firm, stand firm. So the early Muslims were strong. But when they went to Medina, then you have three groups of Muslims. Those that are strong, which emigrated from Mecca, and then you have those which are taking up the majority, who became Muslim and they're just now settling into Medina. They're happy, they can chill out, and they're doing their salah. But then, they don't want too much. And now these other ayats are coming down in relation to, now we have to defend and we have to prepare for battle. This is not what I signed up for. And then that third group, which is the munafiq. And here, Allah is talking about those, because those who inject deviation. So here, in alladhina yulhiduna, okay, ilhad, to deviate from the ayat, to change the injunction. So here, this is the mindset, this is the psyche of those who pay lip service to al-Islam, okay, but they changed in junctions. And how do they do it? Through false interpretation. Oh, this ayat actually means this ayat means that, or no, he didn't mean this, he didn't mean that. And so ilhad is connected to kufr. And so this is more of like a hypocritical kufr. But again, this is all about partitioning, putting things into compartments, like we started with those two ayats in Surah Al-Baqarah. Okay, it's not something new, it's been there. Okay, and this is what led the other religions, and this is what led, Christianity and Judaism to then move away, to go extreme. And this is what we have to be very careful of. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps coming back to these signs of the cosmos, to the natural world. See all of the connection, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is allowing science to penetrate beyond the atom now. Okay, beyond the atom, and still to see all of these connections. But again, when we look at all of what I'm talking about at the moment, Iblees is fully aware of it, because he was in the company of the angels, he was in the company with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he's aware of what's taking place in relation to quantum physics, in relation to frequency and sound. Okay, and Shaitan uses these as weapons So yes, we can say that the world that we are living in now, which is a world which is taking us to the end of times, it is a world weaponed by sound. Okay. And those who are our enemies that we do not see, who are the soldiers of Shaitan, they use sound and frequency as a weapon. You just see it across the whole population of humanity in the cities, and how the masses are now moving into the cities. Okay, how sound is destroying our children, our family, in all the different frequencies. And this is why we need to have a workshop on how that all changed during the COVID part, and how many of our ulama were really talking about that was a crucial time to rebalance. But no, we done nothing about it at all. So we just go on to the next slide, please. And also here in Surah An-Nahl, and mention the day when we will resurrect among every nation to witness over them from themselves. And we will bring you, O Muhammad, as a witness over your nation, and we will have sent down to you the book as clarification for all to think, as a guidance and mercy and good tidings for the Muslims. So in Surah Nisa, okay, that sorry, in Surah Al-Nahl. So here that the Quran is making very clear that everything is manifesting. Everything is manifesting, and everything is clear to be seen. Everything is connected, and there's no deviation. And to warn very clearly that it will all be witnessed. Okay, it would all be witnessed, very, very clear. Go on to the next slide. Remember, the Quran is mubin, very clear. Okay, in Surah An-Nisa, then they do not reflect upon the Quran. So here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala many times puts a question to insan. And how do we know it's a question? Because here we start off with the alif, afala. And now we go into tadabbur. Yeah, tadabbaruna al-Quran. Then they do not reflect upon the Quran. Yeah, tadabbaruna al-Quran. Okay, so there's a difference between tafsir and tafakkur and tadabbur. This tadabbur, which we focus on so much, which is about stepping back, okay, and then looking at the whole. And if we and tadabbur, it's paramount that all Muslims fulfill this command of making tadabbur. And if we just fulfill this command of tadabbur because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, then they do not reflect upon the Quran. Okay, that if we make tadabbur and we step back, then we're not going to see partitions. We're not going to see compartments. That we will see exactly what we saw in that first slide, where we see the similarity, the symmetry, the perfection, the harmony between what's taking place in the brain and what's taking place in the universe, what's taking place in the tree and what's taking place in the lungs. Okay, so this tadabbur. Now, interestingly here, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pointing to who? Pointing to the hypocrites. Okay, pointing to the hypocrites. It's they that want to change the injunctions. It's they that want to change the injunctions through false interpretation. Okay, it's them, and that's that third group that we see in Medina. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not say, or do they not then recite? Could have said, afala yaqaluna. Do they not recite? Allah said here, do they not ponder? Afala yatadabbaruna. To reflect, to ponder, not yaqra'una, to recite. Because if that command was just to recite, afala yaqra'una, if they recited, then they would just recite, but they wouldn't go through the action of going deeper and deeper and deeper into what we know, what we need to understand, which is the science of the Quran, which is the nazm of the Quran. They would just recite it. Like sadly today, many Muslims, we recite, but we don't know what we are reciting. We don't understand it. We don't start to break the Quran down. We don't start to penetrate the Quran. This is why to the hypocrites, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because if that ayat read, أَفَلَا يَقْرَؤُونَ, then they would have then used that to change the injunctions, okay, to change the interpretation, because all they're doing is just reciting and not understanding. But no, Allah is saying that, okay, everything is from me, and for you to see that, yeah, tadabbaruna, yeah, step back and look at everything. So tadabbur here is very important. Next slide. And Surah Al-Baqarah, although here there is a whole understanding in tafsir about what this ayat means, none touch it except the purified. And in relation to the angels, in relation to them touching it. But when we look at the Mufassirun, then the other understanding here is it is in relation to us touching the Quran and not touching the Quran without wudu. So that's how we're going to understand that. So yes, of course, it's the word of Allah. It's for us to understand from the tafsir of Surah Al-Baqarah that the Quran is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not to touch it unless we have wudu, okay, with a minor or a higher. But the other important lesson that we forget here is even if we are fulfilling the obligation here that we are touching the Quran and we have had wudu, or in a state of jannah where we have to have complete ghusl, we could still approach the Quran as a munafiq. We can still approach the Quran with that mindset which is not pure. And this is why the second mission given to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is of the utmost importance. Just think about the ablution, okay? You have to understand this ayat, and we can understand it how the ulama have understood it in relation to the angels and them touching the revelation, and they're the only ones that can only touch it. But in relation to us to be able to read the Quran, to touch the Quran, and we can understand that. But also, if we just look how our ulama teaches about wudu and the limited amount of water that the Prophet ﷺ used, okay, not compared to how the water we use to make wudu today, where we just let the taps just pour with water. The Prophet had limited water, okay, and our ulama, because Allah said, "Kunum as-sadiqin." So our ulama teaches, subhanallah, that it's not, although the ruling, the fiqh of wudu has to be there, but the most important element of the wudu is the internal purification. because we can go through the whole 5 pillars of al-Islam. We can go through the kalima, as you say, we can go through the prayers, we can recite just like as the hypocrites did. But if the internal is not pure, then what state are we in? And that's why that second mission to the Prophet was yatlu alayhim ayatihi wa yuzakkihim, which is in Surah Jum'ah. The first mission given to the Prophet was to recite on them, which goes back to sound. Okay. And then the second mission was tazkiyah, was purification. So is the purification in relation here to water, or tayammum, if you haven't got water to touch the Quran. But the reason why we've included this ayat here is because it's this mindset. Okay, it's more than just the water. It's the wider understanding, to stand back into tadabbur and understand what this purification means on a much more wider scale, which is something counter to what the munafiq did. Next slide, please. And so we return to Surah Al-Baqarah. يا أيها الذين آمنوا ادخلوا في السلم كافة ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين. Oh, you who believe. So we've gone into Surah Al-Baqarah 3 times. Oh, you who have believed, enter. So here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing the believers, okay? Because you've testified that you are Muslim. Or you who have believed, enter into Islam completely and perfectly, and do not follow the footsteps of Shaitan. Indeed, he is you a clear enemy. And we've mentioned this ayat on many occasions, but it's important that we add this in because how it connects to this psyche, okay? That here, oh, you who have believed, enter, udkhulu. So udkhulu here is, in Arabic, it's a fel amr, it's a command, okay? So dakhala is the verb, okay? And udkhulu means to enter. So here, Allah is saying, oh, you who believe, pointing the finger, udkhulu, enter, okay? In, fi silmi, Islam, and submit, okay? And then if we go to the ka, the fa, and the ta, on the ka, again, we have, in tajweed, we have the mud, and this mud means to stretch, means to elongate. And also in Heart C, we connect this mud and how it relates to, for example, fruit and birds flying. But here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, kafata, then enter Islam completely, okay? And which means that the macro, the micro, that every part of your body, all of your organs, all of your systems, all of your thoughts, every action that you do must be in accordance with Islam. Okay. So this is countering this mindset that the hypocrites were in, this mindset that Shaitan is trying to put on to us through his whispers. And once we submit into this is a warning then, and don't follow those footsteps of Shaitan, because obviously he is a clear warning. Next slide. And so that just brings us to the end. It's I just wanted to this week just to step back, because when we look at Nazm the Quran and we go into words and we're going into how Allah tell us structures where he puts different words and the sounds, and which is important for us to understand, which is a miracle, okay, which shows us how the whole of the Quran is structured, is organized, it's perfected. And if the Quran, if the revelation has been sent down in total perfection, which is something that the hypocrites would not agree to. Hence the ayats that we recited in Surah Fussilat, and we looked at ilhad, this deviation, and then how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is then supporting that with all of creation. Okay. And again, you're seeing perfectly everything in structure, it's ordered, perfectly designed, and how both of them come together in perfect harmony in that perfect mizan. And so this is this battle that we are in, and how we started the halaqah many weeks ago when we started to look at a state of ghafla, a state of heedlessness, and this heedlessness is just not paying attention, not being bothered, and we have to be very careful that this state of ghafla doesn't lead us to this false understanding of, you know, we're following the same footsteps as the hypocrites. So may Allah protect us that we don't become hypocrites. But in Surah Al-Fatiha, when we are saying Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, you alone we worship and you alone we ask for help, and every time we recite that, and that's 5 times a day, and when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to repeat ayats, and particularly 5 times a day, there's got to be a big reason there. And if we're just reciting and not doing the tadabbur and the reflection, then you know, we have to be very careful and to think, are we going down this same route? All of the ayats are there, all of the signposts are there, but again, it's only those who have the pure heart. We opened that first slide with the brain and with the universe, okay, seeing that beautiful relationship, that beautiful pattern, and understanding it there. But for many today in society, and sadly for many Muslims, that just won't mean hardly anything at all. But it is only the heart that is purified that will connect to that, because it is the qalb, and it is the qalb as-salim, which will be the only thing that will help us in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the qalb as-salim, okay, which is, and science is showing us now, which is connected to the right brain hemisphere. And it is the qalb that actually has a piece of flesh which acts as a brain and thinks before the brain, the aql. That it is the heart that actually sees. It is the heart that actually thinks. Okay, so this tadabbur is about not seeing through the eyes. It is about thinking. Okay, and that's why it's this constant battle. You can say it is a battle of sound that we are in, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows at the end of times the battle will be connected with sound, and this is the period that we are in, and the revelation is to do with sound, it's to do with recitation. Everything is now connecting to sound. And if you wanted just to explain Islam in 2 easy words, it's high frequency, low frequency. And Iblees knows the battle very well. So his battle is a strategy of bringing insan into low frequency, and the job of us as Muslims, and the job of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet and the Prophet taught the companions all of this, is to go and to move into high frequency. High frequency means you're seeing light. Okay, things are very clear. Low frequency is exactly the path that the munafiqs want to take you down, and the Kufr wants to take you down, and Iblis wants to take you down. So we have to be very, very careful. And when next week, inshallah ta'ala, we'll return to the Quran, you know, how each letter, when you see it, with it, say, for example, we'll look at some examples inshallah ta'ala next week, how letters that we started in the maktab, okay, that we are reciting, but the significance of these letters that are on the end of certain words, okay, why they are there, okay, to create the sense of frustration, of anger, but we're just not understanding it. We're not understanding it because we're not hearing it. And when we are behind the imams in the masjid, they're not understanding it. So likewise, in the month of Ramadan, where if they're not understanding it and they're like a Formula One race car just reciting, they're not connected, so we're not going to be. This is all about understanding this human side. Okay, we have to before we go forward, we have to go back. This is why I'm very keen on this new heading now. It's back to the future, inshallah ta'ala. Any questions? Okay, inshallah ta'ala. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام رسول الله اسمه بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان في خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Just a quick questions. Some students have asked, why do you recite Surah Al-Asr and end with that dua? Because Surah Al-Asr, Imam Shafi'i, one of the great scholars, said if there was one surah that summed up the whole message of the Quran, it is Surah Asr. And Surah Asr is important, fundamental for us to understand in relation to time, because Allah takes time as an oath. And when two companions were together before they parted, one of them would recite Surah Asr. And in relation to the dua, okay, before the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, before he left, a companion talking to someone, he would also just recite that dua, Rabbana atina fid dunya. And again, we haven't got time to talk about it tonight, but that particular dua, how in the Quran, that's also split up. It's split up into two parts. And so it's all connected, but we haven't got time to actually go into that. But that's why we recite Surah Asr. That's why we end on that dua. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.